test is in 4-part, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a senior librarian and a woman interested in working at the library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
I'm interested in doing some work for the library. Are you the person to speak to?
Yes. Right. Well, what sort of work are you interested in?
Well, I've just come to live here in Australia. I don't want a full-time job until my children have settled down, but I really need to get out of the house a bit. And I heard you need voluntary workers for various projects.
Right.
But I don't know if I have the right skills.
Well, we do provide training.
Oh!
We always include an orientation to the library, together with emergency procedures. That's fire regulations, emergency exits, first aid so you can cope with accidents or sudden illness. Things like that which are necessary for anyone who's working with the public. Then we give specialist training for particular projects, like using our database system.
I do have quite good computer skills, in fact.
Oh, great.
Is there any sort of dress requirement?
Well, all staff have to wear a name badge, so they can be identified if they go outside the staff-only areas. But apart from that, there aren't many regulations. We ask you to sign in and sign out for insurance purposes, but that's all. How about transport? Do you live locally?
Well, not too far away. I'm at Porpoise Beach. My husband needs a car during the day, but it's only about 20 minutes on the bus.
In fact, we can reimburse part of your travel expenses in that case.
Oh! Would that be the same if I came by car?
No, because parking is such a problem here. One thing we are looking for, though, is someone who can drive a minibus.
No problem. So, do the projects involve going outside the library?
Some, yes, but not all. We've just finished one which involved working with photographs taken of the area 50 or 100 years ago. It basically involved what we call encapsulation.
Putting them in some sort of covers to keep them safe?
Exactly. It's time-consuming work, and we were very grateful to have help with it. Then, sometime next year, we're hoping to begin working on an initiative involving the sorting and labelling of objects relating to local history. We'll be needing help with the cataloguing.
Well, I'd definitely be interested. How about at present?
Well, we have a small team who work to support those who are unable to read.
Working with the blind?
Yes, or other groups who have reading difficulties. We provide volunteers with equipment so that they can take books home with them and read them aloud onto CDs. We're gradually building up a collection that can be lent to those who need them.
I can see it would be useful, but I'd really like to do some sort of work where I can get the chance to meet people. How about reading stories to children?
That's done by our regular staff. But we do have another project. It's a very long-established scheme which involves helping those who are unable to have direct access to the library.
Oh, I noticed someone with a trolley of books when I was at the hospital last week. That sort of thing.
That would have been one of ours, yes. It's one of our most popular services. Lots of people who wouldn't dream of going to the library normally when they're at home borrow a book when the trolley comes round the ward.
I can imagine. Yes, I'd definitely be interested in that. Right, so how do I enrol?
Well, we do ask all volunteers to commit themselves to a regular period each week.
I could probably do 5 or 6 hours.
Oh, be careful not to take on too much. But we do need someone for a couple of afternoons from 2 to 4, so 4 hours altogether.
That sounds fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Right, so here's the application form. It asks the usual questions, name and address and telephone number. You also need to fill in details of who we should get in touch with in case of any accident or problem like that. We do need to have that filled in. And there's a space for date of birth, but that's only if you're over 75, so we won't worry about that.
No. Oh, it asks for qualifications. Do I need to provide certificates?
They're not necessary. We'll need the names of 2 referees, not relatives or family members, obviously. What else? Signature of parent or guardian. That won't be necessary, as I assume you're over 18.
Yes. What's this? It says civil conviction check.
That's a document we have to provide by law for those working on projects involving children, so we won't need it in your case. But you will need to sign this separate document. That's a copy of commitment. It's basically an agreement to work according to the library guidelines. So, if you'd like to fill this all in, you can do it here or take it home, whichever you prefer.
I'll take it home if that's okay. Right, well, thank you for your time.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You'll hear a radio program on the process of making beer.
First, look at questions 11 to 14. Listen carefully.
Hello and welcome to Gourmet Evening, and this week we're looking at the world's popular beverage, a great favourite today, beer. And in the studio to tell us all about it is Clark Maxwell.
Beer is one of my personal favourite beverages, and I've got a number of facts, tips and trivia about beer to share with you. So, who invented beer and when? What is beer made of? Actually, historians are not entirely sure when beer was invented, but they guess that beer was created accidentally by early nomadic tribes roughly 10,000 years ago. The 4 primary ingredients are malt, hops, yeast and water. Malt, which gives the beer a sweet taste, is made from barley soaked in water until its husks open and sprout. The sprouts are then dried and crushed. The small flowers of the hops vine are added partly because they taste bitter, helping balance the sweetness of the malt. Hops prevent the growth of bacteria that can spoil beer. Yeast is responsible for fermentation, which creates the alcohol and carbonation. Beer makers sometimes use additives or substitutes for malt or hops. Substitutes such as corn or rice can make a beer lighter or cheaper to produce.
Before the broadcast continues, look at questions 15 to 20. You will now listen to the second part of the talk.
Adding fruit gives beer a fruity taste. Beer is not high in alcohol, as we know. The lowest type, light beer, contains no more than 2% alcohol, and the highest may reach 6%. Other drinks such as wine are more alcoholic. Wine contains 8 to 20% alcohol. But that is not to say drinking beer is no danger at all. Like all alcoholic beverages, beer can make it difficult to drive and think clearly. Excessive drinking can also lead to liver damage, high blood pressure, stomach ulcers, and other health problems. However, beer also helps prevent some health problems when consumed in moderation. Beer contains a moderate number of vitamins and minerals. Studies have shown that small amounts of alcohol can reduce the risk of heart disease. Beer also contains selenium, a mineral that promotes bone growth and helps reduce the risk of osteoporosis. I suppose many of you think beer can give you a beer belly, but you are mistaken. Genes determine how fat is deposited. No food or drink can create fat deposits in specific areas of the body. As with all foods, the more calories you consume, the more likely they are to be stored as fat and cause weight gain. Beer contains no fat and averages 150 calories per serving. Well, one more thing. Pay attention to the storage and containers of beer. They will affect its taste. It's a mistake that the taste of beer improves with age, like that of some wines. Beer is a food product that will eventually become stale. It should be stored in a cool, dark location before consumption, and the colour of a bottle can influence the flavour. Brown bottles block out light that reacts with the hops, which could damage the flavour. Green or clear bottles provide little or no protection from light damage. Do you know which country drinks the most beer? Although Britain is even on the list of big consumers, actually the Czech Republic consumes the most beer, at 156 litres per person per year, followed by Ireland and Germany.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You are going to hear a conversation on rivers. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen to the tape and answer the questions.
Please tell me about the current state of the Amazon.
We have increased deforestation, increased human population relating to deforestation, and a role of fire in the Amazon on a scale that's never been seen in history. At the same time, you can see progress in trying to counter that negative trend.
How do you see this?
We see this in the creation of national parks and indigenous areas, and efforts to fund sustainable development activities for locals. We see both good and the bad, and it's going to be a race to finish.
I understand that you started the Minimum Critical Size of Ecosystems project. Could you tell me about it?
A number of years ago, it became apparent that those practicing conservationists didn't have the scientific information available to properly design a conservation area.
They didn't know how big it had to be, right?
People were learning that as forests fragment, the fragments begin to shed species after they become isolated, so they end up becoming poor examples of what they had been. This relates to the size of the fragment.
Do people still study this?
Yes, there is a rich subfield of conservation biology that looks at the efforts of fragmentation. One of the consequences is a general policy response to set up protected areas that are fairly large, something on the order of 1,000 square kilometres.
Now look at questions 26 to 30. As the talk continues, answer questions 26 to 30.
Can you talk a little bit more about the forest fragmentation?
As habitats are destroyed, they are accompanied by habitat fragmentation. So when 50% of a forest is lost, the remaining 50% being is not one large block, but smaller pieces, which makes the conservation problem even worse than saying that 50% has been lost.
And this affects not just forest, but species diversity, correct?
In terms of species loss, we can't give you precise numbers about how many species are lost because of these fragmented landscapes, but we're beginning to get close to where we can make that estimation. And so one of the policy responses to all of this, beyond just trying to create large protected areas, is to try and reconnect the fragments.
You've been active in many projects studying the Amazon region over the years. Can you tell us about that process of understanding the Amazon?
When people first started looking at conservation priorities, there was not much information about the geography of plant and animal species. One of the first clues was an analysis done in 1969. This looked at bird species and found geographic clusters of species which occurred nowhere else. And those are priority areas for conservation.
Was this when people began prioritising refuges?
Yes, it was the first time that someone looked basin-wide at priorities, giving priority to so-called refugean areas.
Was this when the new trend to use Geographic Information Systems, or a GIS, started?
That was in 1990 after we worked out a whole set of biological and conservational priorities and produced a big map using GIS.
What are some of the things that GIS does?
Well, there are several advantages of using a geographic information system. First, you can continually update the system so that it's now a constantly changing picture. You can actually watch changes. Then you can include large amounts of data, including information about the vectors of development. Roads, railroads, pipelines, hydroelectric projects, etc. And finally, because it is accessible on the internet, it makes this information available to anyone who's interested.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today I'm going to talk about the city of Barcelona and its architecture. First, the city. Barcelona is a city of some 1.5 million people. It is a port situated on the northeast coast of Spain in the province of Catalonia. The people speak Catalan as their native language, but most are also fluent in Castilian Spanish and some speak English too. The city centre is surrounded by a ring road which encloses a grid with two major roads running diagonally across it. These are the Avenidas Diagonal and Meridiana. Probably the most famous street in Barcelona is La Rambla, which connects the Plaça de Catalunya in the town centre to the statue of Columbus on the water's edge. All along the centre of this wide boulevard are stalls selling flowers and artistic works. Barcelona was founded by the Carthaginians from modern-day Tunisia in North Africa. It grew under the influence of the Roman Empire, later becoming the capital of Spain. Under strong government, it expanded its trade, exporting cloth to other Mediterranean ports, and establishing itself as a financial centre. It went into decline after 1400, and in 1640 it was the centre of the Catalan Revolution against King Philip IV of Spain. Now it is considered by many to be the cultural centre of Spain, and the Olympic Games were held there in 1992. Now to the architecture. Throughout the city there are many fine buildings, churches, cathedrals, markets and squares, which date back to the 13th century. One very fine square, which can be entered from La Rambla, is the Plaça Real, or Royal Square. This was built by Molina in the 19th century. 7 narrow passages lead into a large central area, which is surrounded by 2-storey buildings. Most of the ground floor is occupied by restaurants and bars, and it is traditionally a place of music and entertainment. It is impossible to talk about the architecture of Barcelona without mentioning Gaudí, who dominated the scene from the 1880s until his death in 1926. His style was unique, a decorative form of Art Nouveau, the style of the 1920s and 30s in Europe. It was based on organic natural forms, which often seem to defy the qualities of the materials they are made from. I will mention just 3 of his best-known works today. The first is Güell Palace. This was built for the Count of Güell, one of Gaudí's main supporters. The building features 2 arched gates, which lead into the stable area. Inside are 2 circular staircases, one for people and the other for horses. The ground floor is built of brick, but there is also much natural stone used in the construction. The roof is quite fantastic, with brightly coloured sculptures built around the chimneys and ventilation shafts. Another project commissioned by Güell is the park named after him. This was meant to be a garden city with 50 houses, but in fact only 2 were ever finished. The influence of nature is strong in the cave-like spaces and animal figures, and again, much use has been made of brilliantly coloured surfaces. But the greatest of Gaudí's works is still under construction, and it is not expected to be finished until 2041. He began work on this cathedral, known as La Sagrada Familia, Church of the Holy Family, in 1882, which means that it will have taken 159 years to complete. The finished building will have 18 towers, the highest being 170 metres high. The building will be 95 metres long by 60 metres wide, and it will hold 13,000 people, a truly impressive monument to Gaudí's great genius. And that's all we have time for today. Next week, we'll look at some of Gaudí's smaller projects, and also his furniture designs. Please make sure that you complete your assignment on Le Corbusier by this coming Friday.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Welcome to Team Mastery. My name is Mo. On your demand, we have started a series of Ielts writing topic, and today I'm going to discuss full essay task 2. If you dream to get band 7, so please stay in touch with me. Our topic is today, some people think that Jews are cruel and that all Jews should be closed. However, others believe that Jews are useful for protecting real animals. Discuss both views and give your opinion. Now you have to think about, Jews have a benefit, or living in a Jew is difficult for them, or it is difficult for them to survive. So you have to structure, you have to plan your essay first. After that you can start. The way I have started, you can start the same way. I took very easy point to make you understand this is how you can write, and you can easily get band 7 in writing. So our introduction here, I have paraphrased even though, and I gave my opinion because that has been asked here. So discuss both views and give your opinion. How I have started here, many animal species are extinct and on the way of disappearing in the last couple of years due to pollution, thirst for money and hunger. So a section of society believe that Jews are useful, means helpful to provide shelter and a safe environment to the animals, while others disagree with the same, because they have written, some people say that, and however other believes that. So how I have written, a section of society, for some people think that I have to say so that Jews are useful, are helpful to provide shelter and a safe environment to the animals, while others disagree with the same, means they are not agree that Jews are helpful. So however, because I have to write my own opinion as well, so however I think it is a prime duty to keep them safe by giving them a protective atmosphere and a food rather than leaving them on roads. Let's start with BP1, how I have written. In BP1, I'll discuss the benefits of keeping them in a Jew. And after that, I have clarified in BP2, like why people think so, that they shouldn't kept in a Jew because of some critical issues and the difficulty they have faced there. So I have given real life examples or to identify or to justify my point of view. So let's start with BP1. In BP1, I have written, there are various merits to keep animals in the zoo, means there's pros or a benefit of keeping them in zoo. First and the major one is eco-friendly environment, while they enjoy living with the different species, which could help for the body growth and development. So it is very good to keep them a zoo because they can have an eco-friendly environment there, and it would be suitable for them to enjoy and live their life, and that would be beneficial for the body growth and development. The second one is education and knowledge that will help in identifying features, species, subcategories, and the functions to promote the young generation to love and feel the nature. So this is how that we can get knowledge from. Like if we keep them in Jew, so I think we can do some scientific research as well. So it would be helpful for people to get education about their species, about subcategories, and how they breed, how they want to live, what kind of environment is suitable for them. So everything can be checked by keeping them in Jew. So the third point is care and protection. Jew instructors will help them in feeding, washing, and caring. I have seen load of stray animals on the roads in India. So it is very difficult, to drive a car because they may cause accident as well. So I think it is good to keep them in Jew. So besides medical checkups, checkups and medicines can be given just in case of an emergency. So therefore Jews are the best way to keep them safe and alive or intact. In very simple manner I have written here. I think it's going to be quite useful for you because these are the things they'll definitely get it in the Jew if we keep them in the Jew. So I have written BP2 here, which is nevertheless, because what I have seen I have gone through the couple of newses and I have written here. Nevertheless, there are several incidents reported in India and other countries cause a disturbance in animal inhabitant, because I think that is the reason why people doesn't want them and they don't want them to keep in a zoo. So for instance, in 2012, one lion found dead inside the zoo due to inadequate diet and improper maintenance. So I have gone through the news and this was found over there. So I think it is not good. Like, we should provide them protection and care. So I think government should do something for them. Hence, this issue should be looked clearly in the future to lessen the hazardous risk. So I think we can reduce the risk, right? Because we should look this one clearly, like what things we can do it. I think they should have a sufficient diet and all kind of stuff. So also another case was reported in West Bengal, and where they kill animal traditionally due to custom, religion, blind faith and rumors. I think it is not good. It is actually not good, because I think they should have some education about, like, rather than living in rumors, I mean, like making own myths and all kind of stuff. I think that should be stopped. And if someone kill or do something, I think that should be penalized or punished through government. So there should be legislation that they can't harm animals. So in conclusion, because accordingly I have written conclusion. So in conclusion, I would like to assert that government should make stringent steps toward guilties to provide safe and accurate environment inside the zoo by minimizing the risk of failure. So this is how I have written my essay, Task 3. I think it's going to be quite useful for you guys. So this is the end of my topic, but don't forget. Welcome to Team Stream. My name is Mohanjit. On your demand, we have started a series of IELTS writing topics, and today I'm going to discuss again task 1. If you are keen to get band 7, please stay in touch, and this is going to be quite helpful for you to get band 7. So today I brought here a line graph. So let's start. Our graph is here today. So the graph below shows the number of books read by men and women at Burnby Public Library from 2011 and 2014. I am not sure about my pronunciation here. It could be different, so I'm sorry. So okay, so let's check here. So here in a horizontal line, they have shown like a number of books read, and the years 2011 to 2014 in this public library. So you have got an idea. It's about men and women who read number of books in this particular library, right? So let's start with introduction. I mean, like, I have paraphrased it, and I think this is the way you can write it. Over there, so below shows the number of books. So I have rephrased it. The graph depicts information about the proportion of books used by both, so men and women, I have written male and female, at Burnby Public Library between 2011 and 2014. So here the time is given if you go through from 2011 to 2014. So you have a clear idea what to write, and this I've written the introduction. Let's go for overall, which is very main. It's quite main for the task. Okay, overall, the greatest number of women used library in the initial year. If you see this one, and they have used this much, is about more than that. So however, it was overtaken by the end of the period, right? So though the trend for both male and female was upward, here, right? So this is how I have written it. Let's start with next paragraph. We will move to next one. Okay, so let's start this paragraph. We have to get the main features out, and this is how we can start it. So from 2010 to 2013 means from here to here. I have taken first because you can see like how they have crossed. So let's start. From 2011 to 2013, more women than men read books and the number of books in the first year was about 4,500 as compared to 3,000, right? So if you see here, women, more women than men, more women than men. Read books, and the number of books in the first year was about, if you see, the first year was about here, so it could be 4,500 as compared to 3,000, which is here. So which increased gradually and reached a peak of 8,500. So as compared to here, we have made a comparison because we have written here more women than men. So we have given a proper explanation about it, right? So this one here, it was 4,500. So which increased gradually, which increased till here, if you check, right? So I have written gradually and reached a peak of 8,500, right? However, but the ratio of men using books, if you see, ratio of men using books increased steadily from about, if you see from here, so it was about 3,000, right? So increased steadily from about 3,000 to 4,000. If you see from here, it went there, right? And from 2011, 2012, right? So afterwards, the number rose sharply. If you see, the number rose sharply, overtaking women in 2000. So overtaking means here. So overtaking men. Oh yes, women in 2013. So this is how I think it's very easy if you identify your features, main feature, what you have to write. So it's easiest, you can get those points out and you can write perfectly. So let's start with the last paragraph. Meanwhile, what is left here, so we can write it. So I want you to have a clear look of the graph. Okay, so this is a graph here, okay, till here. So meanwhile, the pattern for men after 2000, this is here. So we will talk about this section because we already mentioned, right? So the pattern for men after 2013 was entirely different. If you see, it's different, right? The proportion of books read escalated from approximately 9,000 to 14,000. So here it was about 9,000, we can say. So it escalated, increased from approximately 9,000 to 14,000, if you see here. So gone up to 14,000, right? In 2014, right? Which was the highest figure in that period. So this was the highest figure, right? In that period. So however, the figure for women witnessed a slight fall. In a woman, we have witnessed a slight fall till here. So it was from about 9,000 to almost 8,000. So it has gone here. So I think this is going to be quite helpful for you guys. This is the end of my topic, but don't forget to subscribe our channel, like and press the bell icon so that you can get notification of every new videos. Thank you so much. You have a nice day ahead.